I'm sharing my screen. So today we are going to talk about network security group. In the last session, we spoke about Azure VM creation and some of the properties of Azure VM and what kind of issues that we face in real time and what are the possible causes and how you can learn them, right? The possible causes and how to troubleshoot them. So we discussed in the last session, right? So today we will talk about one of the important property of Azure VM, which we should be aware, which is network security groups. Okay. And in case if we get time, then we'll talk about the disk as well. Okay. So I'm taking a scenario. I hope you all can see my screen. Um, so considering this is your virtual network, and within the virtual network, you have multiple subnets created. One subnet is created to host your web applications or web servers. Other subnet is created to host your database servers. Okay, this is a scenario. So your web servers need to talk to database servers, and database servers should talk to web servers. So that is how the communication happens. And your web server is accessible um, through internet, right? And there will be something called load balancer in place, and the traffic is being distributed through load balancer to your backend web servers, and your backend web servers again gets distributed. The load will be distributed to database server using the another load balancer between them. Okay, this is how it works. Simple architecture, right? So you have your end user who is going to access the website. That's a one part of it, right? The web application is being accessible. The URL is being accessible. And the other part is you as a Azure admin, right? Let's say Vijay. Vijay is responsible for managing the Azure resources. So Vijay need to talk to these VMs. How he has to talk? He has to take RDP, correct? Remote desktop protocol. He has to take remote connection to these VMs, okay, to work on day-to-day operations. Maybe he need to log into the VM, check few services, and check the Azure components within the VM, right? Maybe sometimes your application team need to talk to, take they need to take RDP to your VMs. If it's a Linux machine, that should be SSH, which is port 22. Okay. RDP is 3389 and SSH is port 22. On port 22, the communication happens, right? So in this case, how Vijay can connect to this VM, right? So every virtual machine have NIC, network interface card, correct? The NIC contains two IP addresses. One is public IP, the other one is private IP address. Okay. Public IP you are going to purchase from Microsoft. Public IP is a separate service as your VM, storage, etc. You are going to purchase this public IP from Microsoft. Whenever you assign a public IP, you are going to purchase. Yes, there are few free number of IPs you can have, but some of them you have to purchase. But how about private IP address? Private IP is coming from your VNet address space and subnet address space. You are going to define an address space for your virtual machine, virtual network. Let's say the address space is 10.0.0.0/24/16. Okay. Your web subnet, right? This is your web subnet where your web servers are hosted, right? We call them as a web subnet. Might contain a address range of 10.0.1.0/16. Okay. So based on this address space, you are going to divide multiple subnets. You are going to define multiple subnets 10.0.2.0/16. Okay. So your VM get IP address or your NIC will get IP address from the subnet range that you have specified. Okay, you are going to get from here, from this address space. This is how the general architecture looks like, right? Now, if you want to take RDP to your VM, either how you take RDP, you take RDP through host name or IP address. So when I say host name, it could be fully qualified domain name or just a host name. So if it is a fully qualified domain name, let's say it's a web1 and your organization domain name is Contoso, it will be web1.contoso.com. Or you can have a, you can use IP address, public IP or private IP to take RDP. Even within public IP, you have something called DNS. Okay, you can use this DNS name also to connect. In the last session, I've shown you what is this DNS, right? So if you want to take RDP through public IP, yes, you can take RDP because this public IP is purchased from Microsoft and it can be resolvable over the internet. Okay, or you can use the DNS that you configure on the public IP. You can use any one of them because they are resolvable over the internet. Okay, but yeah, before going to that, you can also use private IP, but you cannot use private IP to connect over the internet because private IP is internal to this virtual network. Okay, within Azure, it cannot be resolvable. If you wanted to connect to this private IP, there should be some different mechanism. You should be connected to VPN. From the VPN, you should connect to this private IP. Okay, so going back to this public IP part, as I mentioned, this public IP can be accessible over the internet. So it will be easy for Vijay to connect to this VM. Okay, but it is not secured or not recommended to add public IP to your VM to connect over the internet. That's not a secure thing. Let's say on a, you know, on a corner cases, you wanted to assign a public IP. You assigned a public IP and you're going to connect over the internet through remote desktop connection. But if you assign network security groups, okay, if you assign a network security group in your subnet level, or you can assign this NSG in a NIC level as well. NSG, let's say this is your web-NSG. This is your DB-NSG, right? Maybe you can assign the IP address directly to NIC, web1-NSG. Okay. So if you assign to NIC, the NIC is connected to your VM. Whatever the rules configuring in this NSG, the rules apply to the specific NIC. If you assign this to a subnet, and if you configured any rules in the NSG, the rules apply to entire subnet, which means all the machines within the subnet. Okay, and that's how the scoping work here. Either you can assign a subnet level or a NIC level. Recommendation is to go with the subnet level. Now, you need to understand what is this NSG, what kind of rules it contains. NSG is network security groups. It acts as a software firewall within Azure. So it can allow inbound communication and it can also allow or deny outbound communications. Okay, which means that you can control inbound communications, any requests coming inside your VM, right? Or going out of your VM, right? Those things can be controlled within NSG, inbound, outbound. Okay, so when I say inbound, Vijay is trying to take RDP to this machine. RDP works on 3389. As I mentioned, it is 3389. If 3389 is not added as an exception in the rule, Vijay cannot take RDP. Okay, so that's about the inbound rules. And outbound is the same thing. By default, the communication goes to the internet Other than the internet, if you are going to any other resources, it is blocked. So we'll talk about the default rules that are available within this energy inbound outbound rules. The default rules allow communication from VNet. Any communication within this VNet, maybe between the subnets, right? If DB want to talk to web, web want to talk to DB, that is allowed. Allow from load balancer. If your load balancer is trying to connect to your VMs, that is allowed. And deny all. So these are the three rules, built-in rules or default rules. Other than these two sources, right? If the communication is coming from any other source, that is by default blocked with this rule. So how these rules are works? The rules works on the priority numbers. Okay, there is something called priority numbers. The minimum priorities number is 100, 101, 100, 101, 102, and it goes 65,000 and above. So these built-in or default rules have certain priority numbers. Okay, if you wanted to override these rules, you cannot delete these rules because they are built in our default rule. You cannot delete them, but you can override these rules by creating another rule with a lower priority number than this deny rule. Okay, so it is simple fundamental stuff. If you wanted to allow anything, okay, you need to create a rule with the lower number than the deny rule. So if the deny rule has 65,000, you can create a allow rule 64,900, if 909, if 999, right? Or below that. Because the moment you add lower number than the deny, so lower number takes high precedence when accessing. So that rule will be applied. The request will not go to this deny rule. Okay, this is how it works. Same thing with the outbound. So any communication to the VNet or internet is allowed. And other than that, everything is blocked. Okay. So priority number is very, very important. Lower number priority will take higher precedence in the NSGs. Okay. Now, another thing is, how do I create a new rule with a lower priority number or a higher priority number? In simple, how do I create a NSG rule? Network Security Group. Okay. The NSG rule, right? You can specify source, destination, okay, and port, protocol, and priority number. And what else we can specify? The rule name. Okay, guys, this is how you are going to create. When you're getting energy rule in the existing energy. Okay, guys, you are not going to create a new energy. You're going to create a rule within the energy, because there are three built-in rules. As I mentioned, you are going to create a new rule to override the existing rules. Okay, so source specifying from a specific IP address, okay, or from, I think, from a specific resource provider or something. Is that there are two or more options I will show you. So when I say IP address, you can specify the entire subnet. Let's say if I want to talk to DB server from web server, you can specify this subnet address space, or you can specify a specific VM IP address, right? You can clearly specify what is the source. Or there is another thing called application security group. We call it as ASG in short. So any communication coming from the application security group also you can allow or deny. One is IP address. There is another thing called ASG. The third one is service tags. So service tags are nothing but um, your VM need to talk to any other Azure services, let's say Azure Backup or Azure Site Recovery, in short ASR, right? Or Azure Storage. So every service in Azure will have a certain public IP associated. Okay, those public IPs are keep on regenerated every month on month basis. So if you add them based on the public IPs, if the IPs are regenerating at Microsoft end, you have to always modify this rule. That's difficulty. So that's why instead of adding IP address, Microsoft introduced service tags. Okay, any source coming from Azure Backup or any communication going to the Azure Backup, you can just specify Azure Backup as a service tag or storage as a service tag for storage communications, right? So that's how you add them. You take any one of them and add a rule. And if you put star in the IP address, any IP address, okay? And destination also same thing. It can be to a specific IP address. It can be specific to ASG. It can be specific to a service tag. Okay. And when it comes to the port, what port you want to allow? Whether you want to allow 3389 or port number 22, it's up to you. Okay. Or sometime if it is a website, it will be HTTP, which is port 80. It is a HTTPS, which is a 443 for secure website communication. And protocol could be, right? Protocol could be, it could be a TCP or UDP ports. And priority numbers, as I mentioned, it can be any priority, right? That you can take it, okay, which is not used by any other rules, and which is lesser than the deny rule if you wanted to allow something. And the rule name, it could be if you're allowing a RDP, you can say allow underscore RDP, or you can give any another standard name. Okay, these are the properties of energies where you are going to allow or deny. Now we spoke about IP address, we spoke about service tag. What is application security group? I'll give you a simple example. Okay, now you have a web server 1, web server 2, web server 3, and web server 4. You have a DB server 1, DB server 2, DB server 3, and DB server 4. Okay, guys. So now you have a request to allow the communication from web 1 to DB, web 1 to DB2, DB3, DB4. Now it is a reverse way as well, right? Each machine need to talk to other machines. You see, right, how these rules are looking. It's not looking in a better way, right? Getting my point? So in such scenarios, to avoid these things, Microsoft introduced application security groups. Okay, what is application security group? Application security group, it acts as a bridge. You can create one application security group here, one application security group here. Okay, let's say this is like web hyphen ASG, and this is DB hyphen ASG. Now you need to allow the communication between this all web servers and DB server, correct? What you do is you just add your web servers to this ASG and add all these DB servers to ASG. Okay. Later, you just create one rule that says allow communication from web to DB using ASGs. Create one rule, and all the machines which are added to this ASG will be able to talk to the machines which are added to the DBASG. That's about application security groups. Okay. So we are using this ASG as a mediator to allow the communication in simple words. Okay. That's about application security groups and service tags and IP address based rules. Okay. You allow or deny these rules. Okay. Now, if you have public IP, it does not help you because the default rules are blocking. You need to allow add a new rule which allows the 3389, and it is recommended to add the rules or add the energy in a subnet level, not in the NIC level. Any questions so far on the energy part?
No, sir.
Okay,
It's
so
fine.
hope, yeah, hope this is clear. Now, this is about energy, right? And application security groups. And this is to connect your VMs from the internet or within the subnets or within the virtual networks or different between the different virtual networks. We will talk about the different connectivity options, like how we can connect from a remote computer without a public IP, using private IP, how you connect, right? You will set up a VPN and you have another VNet and you have VMs, how these VMs can talk to the other machines, right? What kind of connectivity we will establish, that we'll talk about when you're talking about the networking part. So this part which I explained will help you in day-to-day operations. You get a more request to allow the IP or deny the IP by creating a new rule in an existing energy or creating a new energy. So we should be very clear in these terminologies. So let me take you to one of the existing virtual machine. So I think we'll go for this, and I will show you the things that I spoke about it. I'm going to the networking. So in the networking, this one do not have any rules, which means we don't have any energy rule. So these rules are not exist, which means the communication is allowed to the internet. Anybody's communicating from the internet will have access to this VM if they have a public IP. This VM also have a public IP, but it does not have the IP address associated. It will be associated when you power on the machine. Let's power on the machine. So this is with the public IP combination without energy. Later we'll associate the energy, okay, and we'll try to connect. So then we will add a rule and try to connect. We'll see the different use cases. VM is starting now. Let's see. Ideally, it should not take this long to start. Okay, it took it, but finally it is started. And you got the public IP address. Copy the public IP, MSTUC, and try to connect. It's connecting. Just giving a random username, right? So it's able to connect, right? Without energy, it is connecting, because when you don't have energy, which means the communication is allowed to the internet. Unless you have any other firewalls and custom routes in place, that is a different topic. Okay. Now it's connecting. So what I will do is I will create an energy. So let me go to network security groups. Let us choose the same location, create a new energy. Or b underscore rg. Okay, web underscore energy. And it is the same location I'm choosing. Next, create. Okay, the rule is created. I'm going back to network security groups now. Refresh. Okay, it's not coming there, so I'll go directly from here. Now you see inbound security group rules. Allow VNet inbound, allow Azure load balancer inbound, deny all inbound. And these are the priority numbers. The high priority number is deny rule. You can see here, which takes the less precedence than these, because they have the lower priority number will take higher precedence. If you go to the outbound security groups, allow VNet outbound, allow internet outbound, deny all outbound. Other than these rules, if a communication is going to any other thing, that is by default blocked. Okay. Now what I will do is I will allow the associate this energy with our subnet. Going to rg hyphen vnet and selecting the subnet. What is the subnet name? It's a front end subnet name. Okay, and click OK here. Okay, now I'll just do a refresh here. Go to the machine, go to networking, and you can see the network security group is attached to subnet level, and your VM is part of this subnet. Okay, that's why you're seeing here. Now, if I try to take RDP, okay, we'll just wait for a few minutes. We'll wait for a few more minutes. So, okay, did you guys log into Azure? I mean, through laptop? Can you try to take RDP? I'll do it this way. It's giving access. We can test the connection using Network Watcher. Go to Network Watcher, go to IP flow verifying, select the resource group, select your machine, inbound communication on 3389 port, and I'll go to my public IP. What is my IP address? Copy this IP and put it here. My port is any. Now check the communication. It will tell you which rule is allowing, which rule is blocking the communication. So it says allow, but it could be some, you know, cache issue. The access is denied. You can see here, right? It is denied. Ideally, it should not allow. Still, it is giving. Could be some issues with the cache, right? So, can you guys try from your end? One of you, just open remote desktop connection and enter this IP address and try to connect.
Yes, Kamalakar, not able to access.
Yeah, it won't give because the rule is not allowed. Ranjit, are you trying? Yeah, now it's working as expected. It's going to deny the request. And you can also validate. It's validated from here. It's blocked. Right? It's denied.
Yes.
So now what I will do, I'll add a exception. So exception I'm taking from a specific IP address. That's my IP address. Okay. And destination could be anything. You can specify the IP address of your VM or anything. So I'll just go with the any, and the port number is 3389. And I'm going to say 3389 here. Allow the communication. So the rule is created, and now I'm trying from my end. It's allowing the communication. Can you try from your end? Can you try from your end, Raju? You are on mute.
Can you show me the IP address once?
Yeah, it's 52.255.176.201.
Yeah, 1 minute, I'm trying. No, not able to access.
Not able to access, right?
It will,
Because only it's allowed from my.
Correct.
I'm modifying to any and saving this. Updating the existing rule. Any source, any IP address. Yeah, you can try after a few seconds. Now, if I use the network watcher and see what it gives.
Yes, I'm able to access now.
Right. So now you understood the rules and stuff, right? Okay.
Correct.
And use this always to validate the connectivity. It says which rule is allowing, right? Which rule is denying, it will tell you. So this is the rule which is allowing the communication. Okay, clear. Right. So this about energy, guys. I don't want to go further. Okay. In next session, we'll talk about the disk, and I'm going to give you a task. Just see if you can implement it. Okay. You have a VM, and this has a OS disk. Okay. Log into the VM. Go to C volume. C and C volume. Create a folder with a -test or something. Create a file within test folder. Okay. Then log into Azure portal. Go to VM OS disk, create a snapshot. Okay. From the OS disk. Then create a new disk from snapshot that you created above. Okay. Create a new VM from disk created from snapshot. Log into a new VM and validate the test folder and test file. Okay, this is a task for you guys today, and complete it today, and we'll see. In case anyway, whether you're stuck or not, I'm going to implement this again. If you do it, you'll get some experience, and you might get questions, so I'll be able to clarify them. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye for now.